Museum has been in Mansfield since 1904. We are a local history museum fundamentally, so we collect objects that are to do with the town and the district. And we did a new gallery called Made in Mansfield, and it is a new gallery all about the different industries that were and are in the district.
The Made in Mansfield in particular, I joined at the time that project started, which is all about local industry. It doesn't just focus on the process of how you make things or the process of how a machine works in a factory or how you extract coal. It's about the people, and that's the most important thing.
So this project is about recording the local history of the textiles mills and industry in the area in the olden days and up to the present day. A lot of the industry as it was has disappeared, but there are still pockets of micro industry and slightly bigger industries like Crystal Knitwear and Torre Textiles. And I suppose this is about celebrating the history and what is here in the present day in the Made in Mansfield gallery. So it's a bookend to the Heritage Lottery funded project there.
I know your face. I goes, yeah, you've worked here before, haven't you? I says, yeah. Mending? Yeah. I says, she says, what are you doing now? I says, I'm going on examining. You're not going on examining, let's have you back on mending. So, thank goodness, it would be a good turn there. I got back on mending.
I went into textiles because I followed my dad into textiles. Not that I wanted to do textiles, I didn't. I wanted to be a farmer. That money was tight, and I went into textiles. I started at a factory in Mansfield, and I left there unexpectedly, and I went to work at Coates Viola at the mills.
I was on packing to start with, just put them in cellophane bags, but then I went on to examining.
In 1958, at a company called Forster Claymores in Mansfield, which in those days they'd got 3 manufacturing plants in Mansfield, which were mainly ladies' stockings, hosiery and knitwear.
And I started working in the knitwear trade in 1960, so a long time ago now, but yeah, I started there when I left school. With a friend. We were in the same class together and we started work together, and I'm still in touch with her now, which is lovely.
Knickers, put the elastic round them and round the legs and the waist. And in the about 1970, I think the hot pants come in. And I used to make the hot pants.
Oh, I can remember.
That were at Beltex on Sutton Road. Yeah, on a lock stitch machine.
She's done quite a few jobs, haven't you?
Yes, and then when I went to Ocean Mills, I used to put pockets on, zips in, stoling round the cardigans, tabs on, buttonhole in.
Yeah.
The first introduction to textiles was at a fairly early age because my father started at Plesley Vale, the Viola mills, on leaving school. I think it was 14 when and he stayed there till he retired, I think early 60s, probably 63, due to ill health. And I used to go down on evenings when he had to go back and check on different things. And it was interesting, very interesting. But then, as I grew a little bit older, I used to think, no, I don't want to go into textiles.
Oh, 32. I started in 1946. I'm finished in 2006, I think. I finished when I was 66 anyway.
I came to live in around this area in 1972. My dad came out of the army, and some of the jobs I got were sort of local in in the Mansfield area, you know. But I went to the knitwear factory, Mansfield Mills. First off, I was doing a bit of all sorts, you know, packing and just generally where I was needed. And then I was asked if I'd like to go on one of the machines, and would I like to try and do machine work, you know. So said there was like net linking jobs that were going, there was tabbing. So and that was just to help out if it was needed. So I went on that, and I did that for about 2 years. Net linking, jumpers round the neck, you know, doing round the necks.
I got myself to Cooper and Row because Meridian was having a bad time, and I knew they were going to close. And I went to Cooper and Row, and there they had sat just 6 ladies who lived in Sutton, and they were all ready for retiring. And they said to me, "Oh, so you're the new Croyer? Well, you won't be here long because they've got all these styles that we're not going to do and you won't want to do them." And I did, I took them on. And they were cardigan as what you called a stole. And you didn't just put the collar on like you normally would. You took it, you had to wrap it around your arm and take the stole from the bottom of the cardigan all the way up and all the way down the other side and get the measurements each side exact. I enjoyed it, I loved it. And then the day that finished, that style, the ladies again said to me, "Oh, you'll be going now. She only set you on for all these, you know." And then she found something else for me, this manager did, and she always kept me in work.
All them people got presented with a watch for 25 years.
Previous textile worker, 11 years. My dad was there all his life, 47 years. 1970 that is, because he started in 45. So I tell him, this chap, his first job, they sat him at the side of the radio, 14, and this says to him, "Let us know when the war's ended." 25 years, they used to have a 25-year club dinner.
It's important to involve people in local history because you gain so much more information just from doing that. You can't tell a genuine story that is true to the area and true to the history without involving, I think, as many people as possible in some way.
I want the project to happen because I like recording what's happened in the town in the very distant past and in the current times for posterity. So it's great. It gets lots of different people in the community involved in their heritage and in the museum.
I really love the stories of everyday people. I really like the everyman. I really like people that you can look up to as well, obviously, your role models, but I think everybody has a part to play in the local area, and I think Mansfield Museum has always captured that really beautifully and always engaged people, and it's a bit like a community hub really as well as a museum, and I thought it was a really good chance to be involved in that. These images have actually been created in collage workshops. For example, here's some collage workshops that I did with members of the local community, but these ones mainly are by pupils at the Sandworth Church Academy, and they were presented with a whole range of archive material such as old knitting patterns and knitting instructions, and they've cut them up and assembled them into quite humorous little circular collages. The circles are coming from the idea of they got to make badges, but the circles also a very common theme in spotty socks, so that's how they've developed. So this is my rough concept for the museum. So the textiles industry around here was mainly based on hosiery. So that's socks, tights, stockings, things like that. It's the easiest stitch, which we're going to be doing. Just a single straight line of crochet. So we're basically making string, which we can then twist and turn into text. And then I've stitched that on there, which was quite hard. So we're not going to do that this afternoon because you won't come back to the next session. So pull yourself a length off probably the width of your arm, about 1 metre. And then to get started, you need to use your pointy finger, okay? gripped a bit of the yarn in that hand, so I've clamped it with my fingers. So I'm wrapping it round and I'm making a cross. Can you see? So you put your crochet hook through that first little loop and you're gripping this shorter length here because it's all about tension. And I'm pulling it through. So I'm basically hooking it. Why socks? I chose socks for the project because Mansfield's textiles industry, amongst other things, was largely based upon hosiery items, so tights and socks and items like that, linking back to the framework knitting. And I thought socks were a really nice reference for everybody to be able to relate to, and also slightly humorous, and also you can hang them up and they're a very domestic object that everybody's familiar with, but you're not familiar with bits of receipts appearing on them or bits of a conversation or recording of a mill. So I wanted to make an everyday object into more of a special object, but also quite a humorous object that everyone can recognise as well.
Raw materials came into the factory, so the cotton and the wool came in as raw materials. That came in on the bottom floor, and that was then turned into some sort of thread. When I say thread, it would be as thick as your arm. And as it went through the various processes, our job was eventually to turn it into a very fine thread. So we'd get bobbins which were about that big, and they'd go on the top of the machine, and they'd go through what we call a drafting system, which is a set of rollers, and it would go onto a spool. So the spool was a millimetre thick. The yarn that came through at the end was a millimetre thick. And after leaving me, the yarn would then go on to winding, and they would take all the impurities out. So if you've got a knot in it or a slub in it, the winding would take those out.
Right, this is a fully fashioned knitted cardigan, which in my working time was knitted on a Bentley cotton knitting machine. And this is the job I did. I had a bar like that and ran every stitch on the rib and the sleeve, and they was transferred onto a bar onto the Bentley cotton knitting machine, which knitted 16 heads at a time, and then they were transferred upstairs, weren't they, to Edie's department?
Yes. When I received this, it was 2 sleeves, a back and front, and my job was to seam it all together, and that's your seams, and all your ribs and your cuffs all had to be level, and your underarms had to be level. We had all different work, Cortel, lambswool, Shetland, stripe work, coloured work.
Where the garment's all been done, it's intact, and you've got all these ribs, and you place the ribs all on your knee. Place them all, not just for the sake of putting them on your knee, you'd place them there to make sure that they were all intact, the same length and everything before you started. And then you feed the rib on as so, 2 fingers there, finger and thumb there, and for that reason I now have a big lump on my thumb. You'd feed it on to the machine,
to your needles,
onto the needles, and the needles would vary from, this is a thick one, this would be 8 point. The points of the needles were called 8, 16, 8, 10, 16, 18 and 21. So 21 was obviously your finest and 8 was your biggest. In fact, there was also a 6. I didn't like working on the big needles. I preferred to work with the small needles because the smaller needle you worked on, the more money you'd get.
This tin from 1952. And there's a lot of different kind of needles in. I can't pick it up, come here. Next, the previous ones goes I can't put this right. You've got a loop here, and then there's continuous loops making the stocking.
If you think at Pretty Polly, we would do something like about 300,000 dozens per week. An awful lot of hosiery. You know, and it's all a mechanism. And also, from my point of view, where most of my remit, when I was at Pretty Polly, was sort of as a print buyer. I mean, I was possibly in the forefront of what I call print technology.
You used to have cases of work at the end of your bench, and you used to have to fetch them, then just examine them all and put them straight in another box. And they used to have quality control come and check them every so often. And if they found anything wrong with it, you had to go through all the lot. Everything you'd done.
Most of my textile life has been involved in sales and marketing and some planning as well. I always remember my first time I went to a customer. One of the executives used to be a guy I can't remember him, and he used to deal mainly with Marks and Spencers on lingerie and footwear and slippers and things like that. And I went down with him once, and maybe this is not the right thing to say, but I remember the first place we actually went into was the bra making section, and then into lingerie, which was very interesting. And from then on it continued for many, many years, and I went into sales, looking after household textiles, industrial fabrics, which covered a multitude of things. Also involved with lycra, and there were one or two factories in Nottingham that did lycra, mainly nylon lycra to start with, and then we went into cotton lycra with other different machines.
I mean, it was quite daunting to start with, you know, because you got all these little needles, little teeny weeny needles all sticking out of this machine, you know, and had to be each needle, there was a hole in the rib that coincided with each needle.
And the fire alarm went off, and all us young ones dashed out to the club. They said was giggling because the factory was on fire, because that's how we were when we were younger. We nipped to the club on Newgate Lane, and then we had a knock on the door the next morning. You won't be going to work anymore, the factory's burnt down.
Always had the radio on, always had a bit of music. You know, they always put the radio on so you could have some music on. We spoke to each other, everybody always talked, you know, but we weren't allowed to talk a lot because the supervisor would come and say, "Come on, girls, get on with the work."
There was like, you'd have a coding of how you spoke, and people understood, you know, you'd abbreviate everything you said so that you could carry on with your work.
You know how giggly you are when you're young. She says to me, "Carol, it must have been arson." And I went, "Who's he?" she just sat back on bed and she was in hysterics. Went, "Who's he?" I'd never heard of arson. She's on about the fire up Southwell Road. Well, she still remembers it to this day because we're both in her 70s now. She just cracks out laughing when she sees me. She don't see me a lot. Who's arson, Carol?
We mended everybody else's wrong bits up best we could, and most of the time they'd still pass for a perfect. But up to 3 courses out, we could put 3 courses in and still make it nice and flat. That's my little original one. They don't look as thick now these times. Picking all up, look. Then you just mend it across the top. Little telltale signs I was behind, look. But they would have been trimmed.
We chose textiles because We felt it was probably fairly underrepresented in what we've done in the past.
Especially for the sort of workers and things, I think it's nice to know that your stories are important. You know, people make a place, and part of what makes Mansfield Mansfield is the history of the industries that were and are still here.
Crystal Knitwear was established in 1990 as a family-run bespoke knitwear manufacturer based in Mansfield. We specialise primarily in natural and British wool yarns and fabrics. We are very proud that we're still a knitwear manufacturer based in the Mansfield area. But as a specialist British manufacturer, we try and focus on sustainable British wool and other more sort of specialised wools and a higher end product.
And I've loved hearing stories about local people, but what I've really loved is meeting the people and talking to them, and the generosity of their sharing their memories with us has been brilliant, and I feel really honoured that they've done that. And also I'm absolutely thrilled that people have come along and wanted to be part of the project, and they've created these huge pieces of stitch for the project, for the museum, and that's brilliant, that's lovely.
The students have had a bit of an insight into the textiles heritage of Mansfield. They've learned lots of new techniques, collage, looking at different crochet techniques, different types of stitch, and they've found it really interesting. New techniques that we can then apply in our art lessons that they hadn't experienced before.
It's been interesting learning about different forms of art that are different to what we would usually do in just a normal art class. Personally, I think I'd say the crocheting is the most interesting.
Probably the work with the crochet. It was really relaxing, and it got easier to do as you went along.
Yeah, I've learnt to crochet, which I've never done before.
I've enjoyed working with the different fabrics and learning more about the workshop heritage.
I think I'm enjoying the stitching. It's different because it's easier than crocheting.
I think my favourite one has been the stitching and using the different fabrics and like trying printing and stuff and being different.
It's something different and something I've never tried before, even if it is difficult.
New techniques that the students have enjoyed, so I'll definitely look at embedding that into some of my future lessons.
The most important part has been capturing people's stories and making sure that I represented their experiences as well as possible, through stitch or through images or just through the general colours and the look of each piece that was created.
Well, I enjoyed my times here, you know, and like I say, I made some good friends.
I've certainly learned from talking to different people is the skill and attention to detail required of the people working in either knitting factories or on hosiery and things, and the eye for detail they required was amazing.
Way to describe what I've created and what I had intended to do was to create a kind of trade union banner. So it's a series of trade union banners in the form of socks, which I don't think has ever been produced before.
And calculations were passed on from father to son. And that's what happened in my case, it was passed on from father to son. My dad showed me how to calculate all the various wheels and how to do this, that and the other. You know, he knew the job.
There was a lot of families there. A lot got married and had children, and we all grew old together. It was a lovely time in my life, and I miss them very much.
For many of them it was a very happy time in their lives, and so it's a pleasure to recount it and talk to people and share it with other people.
Nothing's so frightening to actually go into a nail locking room where you've got 100 women.
You could earn a lot of money. I was earning a lot more than my dad. Dad was a policeman.
I think textiles as a sort of skill is still not necessarily celebrated enough. Knitting and crochet and embroidery and things are sort of seen as quite soft skills that, oh, it's very nice, but you know, you don't kind of focus on the actual talent involved.
It's been a real honour, and it's been a real investigative process of going through material that some people would just disregard and yet other people have kept, like little receipts or an airline ticket or a letter from their boss. I think it's really interesting to see what people keep and what other people disregard, and then to weave that into the textiles. And it's been a real honour to have been shown all that material and to have been trusted to use it in a sensible and celebratory way.
What I've really liked about it is that I like the fact that all the different groups of people and artists involved have all just gelled in such a fantastic way and got on with it and found it really interesting. So for me it's worked for everybody, and that's what's great about a project like this. It's been ideal. We've got the artists have loved it, the young people have loved it, the people that used to work in the industry have loved it, and it shows in the work they've created and in the film that shows that process.